Welcome back. Two of the three people on the screen right now are Pulitzer Prize recipients who have indeed just authored their second book on our past president, Philip Rucker, Carol Leonnig, our guest tonight. And Carol, this one's for you. This is about a scene in the book where the Secretary of Defense, Esper, learns from the general in charge of Operation Warp Speed that the vaccines are coming along. And here's how you guys write it. Esper was initially delighted when General Perna told him he was authorizing contracts to produce two promising vaccines. But the Secretary's ebullience then turned to concern. If the president learned they had millions of doses produced, would he or a White House advisor start demanding they administer them to the public before the vaccine had been fully vetted by the FDA? Carol, this dovetails with the reporting in this book that the president's concern over the coming pandemic was more about polling than public health. And it's clear the people around him were concerned about that.
You know, everything with Donald Trump, especially so in 2020, is seen through the lens of how it benefits him. And in the year 2020, many of those insiders got kind of too close a shocking look at just what that meant. A callousness towards the lives of Americans, a focus on burnishing his own image for the reelection to make sure the polls were good. How am I doing in the numbers? Those were his priorities. And in this moment that you describe, it was stunning to learn that the Secretary of Defense, upon finding that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, upon hearing that they are looking at vaccines with an 80% effectiveness rating, his reaction is first happiness and then panic. What if Donald Trump finds out? And what will he do? What will the White House do? What will Trump's closest aides want? What will the president want? Well, they all know what the president wants. He wants a vaccine before the election because he wants to have delivered on that promise and he wants to get reelected. But actually, Esper is worried that the president may order people to get the vaccine before it is properly vetted, before it's safe, and before the trials are completed. And he starts wondering if they should try to hide this light under a bushel basket.
Phil, talk about the call that Mike Pence made on 1/6 over to the Pentagon, which, according to the body of reporting on that day, is one call more than Donald Trump placed on the subject.
That's exactly right, Brian. This was a moment of national crisis. The Capitol was under siege by violent rioters, and you would expect the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, to be active, to be calling the Pentagon, to be trying to get control of the situation. But our behind-the-scenes reporting in this book shows that President Trump spent those hours in front of a television set, watching what was unfolding at the Capitol, and essentially paralyzed from doing his duty as the Commander-in-Chief. Instead, you had Vice President Pence, who was in a hideaway, effectively. He was under threat physically at the Capitol. His family was in danger. People were chanting, "Hang Mike Pence," all around him. And it was Vice President Pence who was calling the Pentagon, who was saying, get these troops here now, get this building under secure, get this building cleared out of these rioters. And importantly, he refused to be evacuated from the Capitol because the vice president thought it was essential for the American people that he remain in the Capitol to do his job, to certify the election whenever the Senate and the House could reconvene. It's a chilling bit of reporting, and it just speaks to how little President Trump did in that moment. He effectively melted away.
Carol, let me ask you a final question about process. There are so many people floating around Washington who want a little dose of hagiography, who want a chance to get the stink of having worked for Trump off their otherwise stellar resumes. And some of them are vaunted people, Esper, Barr, Milley, Pence, for that matter, Ivanka and Jared. So an author comes along, and how do you guard against becoming their resume burnishing tool in the scope of a massive project you two are involved in?
I'm really glad you asked that question, Brian, and I'm really glad you used the word guard, because that's exactly how Phil and I felt in these moments, in these interviews. Sometimes we sat with people for 7 hours at a time, and we were on guard for people wanting to make everything a little more gossamer about how they handled the situation, make themselves look a little more brave, or perhaps a little more resolute. And in fact, I think we all know what the standards for serious journalists are, but I'll repeat them here. We don't have anything in our book that we couldn't corroborate independently. Every time that it was possible, we asked our sources for additional people who knew this information, or we sought out those as well. We asked our sources for calendar entries and text messages. I mean, we're pretty pushy and nosy, and they showed them to us to help, again, make sure that what they were alleging is something that we could take to the bank. And if we could not find that kind of information, if we could not find trust in what they were alleging, we didn't publish it. Now, I want to say there's another reverse element to this, and that is people who want to be associated with Donald Trump for their political benefit. They want to tap into the political base of Donald Trump. Some of those people were running from us as well because they had raised serious questions about Donald Trump's ability to lead, about the insanity of some of the things that happened in the final month of the presidency, and in fact confided to people that they were quite afraid of what Donald Trump would do. And they've tried to deny those things to us, and we've corroborated them, but they've tried to avoid being critical of the president because it's important to them politically to be aligned with him.